A quiet but destructive revolution is beginning in the global financial architecture, and at its center, unexpectedly, is Canada, a country long regarded as the most reliable partner of the US, a political twin across the northern border. But under a new economic course shaped by the highly influential politician and financier Mark Carney, Ottawa no longer intends to play the role of Washington's junior ally. According to information obtained by journalists from the Globe and Mail, citing sources in Canada's Ministry of Finance, the government has begun a large-scale operation to liquidate its gold reserves stored on U.S. territory, in federal depositories and private American vaults. This decision shocked not only the White House, but also global markets, because it is not a one-time adjustment of reserves, but a strategic dismantling of Canada's dependence on Washington's control over its assets. Economic analysts are calling the development the Canadian precedent. For the first time in history, a G7 state is voluntarily stepping out from under U.S. monetary guardianship, using gold as an instrument of restoring financial sovereignty. And the architect of this unprecedented step is Mark Carney. His influence on Canada's economic strategy is enormous, and sources in Ottawa say he personally oversaw the preparation of a secret plan to detach the country from the American financial infrastructure. The reason is simple. Donald Trump's tariff policy, imposed on Canada's automotive and industrial exports, placed the country's economy in direct dependence on decisions made by the White House. And while Japan responded by targeting US-held gold reserves in New York, Canada is going even further. It is telling Washington that it will no longer store its wealth in the US. According to Bloomberg Canada, the share of Canadian gold held in US depositories is shrinking rapidly, with shipment after shipment being moved either to Montreal or sold on global exchanges, and the proceeds converted into euros, Canadian dollars, and partly into gold stored in Zurich and Singapore. Such a transfer of assets means only one thing: Canada is systematically preparing for a world in which the US is no longer a guarantor of economic stability. And Carney, whom financial circles call the shadow prime minister and the architect of a new Canadian sovereignty, is at the center of this process. According to Reuters, the cabinet has long been discussing measures to protect the country from the unpredictability of American trade policy, since every new Trump tariff turns Canada into a hostage of Washington's decisions. Now Ottawa is openly signaling that it has its own path and is ready to pay any price for independence. Insiders at the Bank of Canada say the gold decision went through a tough but deliberate debate. Some politicians feared that selling reserves could unsettle investors, but Carney insisted the revenue must fund tariff compensation, support for industry in Ontario and Alberta, and strengthening of the Canadian dollar against currency volatility caused by Trump's trade war. The real impact, however, is political. For the first time, the White House is facing a situation in which one of the closest U.S. allies no longer trusts the American financial system. And while Japan's actions could be explained by regional rivalry with China, Canada's move is a direct message that allies are no longer willing to follow Washington blindly. According to analysts at Goldman Sachs, Canada's decision could become a point of no return in global economic history. If even countries like Canada begin withdrawing gold from the US, confidence in the American financial infrastructure could face collapse, triggering a domino effect that hits the dollar itself. Political Washington is already reacting sharply. Insiders at Washington Post report that Trump was furious when he learned about the second wave of Canada's gold withdrawal and demanded preparation of economic measures against Carney's coalition in Ottawa, up to a revision of trade privileges. But the problem for the White House is much deeper. How do you punish a country that is refusing American gold precisely because it no longer trusts the good faith of the US? Experts at the Rand Center for Strategic Studies write that Canada is hitting the US in its most sensitive area: trust. The global financial system rests on one unspoken principle: America is the main and honest custodian of other nations' wealth. And if this principle collapses, everything else collapses with it. And Mark Carney, according to sources in the London City, understands this perfectly. He is preparing Canada for a future in which multipolarity is not a slogan but a reality. Canada is entering a new era where its economy will not depend on Trump's decisions, tariff threats, or gold storage on foreign territory. For the first time in many decades, the country is choosing a firm course toward economic sovereignty. And the US, according to Bank of America experts, is only beginning to realize that what is at risk now is not just money, but the entire system they built after World War II. If Washington fails to preserve the trust of its closest partners, the next step will be a mass outflow of gold from American vaults. Then, the US dollar may, for the first time in 100 years, find itself in the position of a currency no longer trusted. And on that day, the whole world will remember that it all began right here, with Canada under Mark Carney deciding enough. According to Politico, anxiety is growing within Trump's circle. Several advisors have told the president directly that if Canada continues selling off gold stored in the US, it may push Europe and Australia to reconsider their reserves. And that means trillions of USD in assets propping up the entire dollar pyramid. And the most dangerous aspect, as noted by the Peterson Institute, is that Canada cannot be accused of subversive policy. Its arguments sound entirely rational. We are simply defending ourselves. In Ottawa's corridors of power, there is growing discussion of a new economic doctrine. Carney's strategy envisions Canada ceasing to act as a raw material appendage of the US and beginning to build its own industrial sovereignty based on domestic innovation and settlements in friendly currencies. Insiders at the Bank of Canada claim that part of the proceeds from the gold sale is already being directed toward creating a fund to protect Canadian companies from tariffs and toward financing critical infrastructure independent of US suppliers. And the key proof of the seriousness of these intentions was a recent closed meeting in Ottawa where Carney presented a long-term plan to detach Canada from dollar influence, including shifting part of external settlements to a Canadian digital dollar developed jointly with European fintech platform engineers. According to experts at The Economist, this could become a breakthrough that would make Canada the first G7 country to consciously step out of the US monetary shadow. And now, the question is no longer whether Canada will dare, it already has. The question is, who comes next? Washington understands that if this wave is not stopped now, in a few months, American depositories will begin to empty at an alarming pace, and then the fear of losing control over the global economy will cease to be an analyst's forecast and become a visible reality on trading screens around the world. For as one Western diplomat said in an interview with Financial Times, commenting on Carney's actions, when even your closest allies start taking their gold out of your house, it means they no longer believe you are the master. And this is why Canada's move becomes not just an economic maneuver, but a political warning to the entire West. The era of unconditional trust in the US has come to an end. For Washington, this is a blow that cannot be ignored, because losing the status of the primary custodian of global assets means losing the very foundation of American financial power. And if Trump's response turns out to be delayed or insufficiently convincing, Ottawa's decision will become the detonator of a global shift that will rewrite the rules of the world economy for decades to come.